Welcome to our deep dive into D.H. Lawrence's Sons and Lovers.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah, we're going to be going through the novel
Okay.
chapter by chapter and try to figure out why this book
Right.
is considered such a powerful and an enduring piece of literature.
Mhm.
And we'll uncover the layers of meaning, the intricate character dynamics,
Yeah.
and see why it resonates with readers today.
You know, it's interesting you say layers because one of the first things that strikes me
Oh, yeah.
about Sons and Lovers is how Lawrence uses symbolism,
Yeah,
particularly nature imagery, to reflect the characters'
Oh,
internal struggles.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And right from the start, you're just thrown into this really vividly depicted world.
Yeah.
It's a working-class mining town in late 19th century England. And Lawrence doesn't shy away
No.
from the harsh realities of the time.
You're right.
The coal mines themselves almost become like characters representing this oppressive force that really shapes their lives.
Exactly. And think about the way he describes the cramped, dark spaces
Oh,
of both the mines and the Morel family's kitchen.
right.
They mirror the characters' feelings of being trapped and suffocated.
Yeah.
You can almost feel the weight of their circumstances bearing down on them.
Yeah. So right away, we're introduced to the Morel family.
Right.
Gertrude the mother, Walter the father, and their eldest son, William.
Mm.
And it's clear from the beginning that there's this tension in their marriage.
Yes.
I'm curious, what are your
Yep.
thoughts on Gertrude?
Oh, she's a fascinating character.
Yeah.
Intelligent, refined, and clearly yearning for something more
Right.
than her life as a miner's wife offers.
Yeah.
And she seems to almost resent Walter for not being able to provide that for her.
Yeah. And there's that scene early on where Walter locks Gertrude out of the house at night.
Right?
It's so dramatic.
Oh, it's more than just dramatic. I
Right.
think that scene is crucial to understanding Gertrude's trajectory.
Okay.
It symbolizes her feeling completely powerless in the marriage,
Mm.
driving her to seek fulfillment elsewhere, namely in her sons.
Okay, so you see that shift happening almost immediately.
Yes.
She starts to invest heavily in William,
Mm-hmm.
who is excelling in school, and seems to represent this chance for a better life.
And if we consider the historical context,
Yeah.
this was a time when industrialization was rapidly changing the social fabric of England.
Right.
Traditional gender roles were being challenged,
Yeah.
and the working class was struggling to adapt.
Yeah.
William's success,
Right.
albeit temporary,
Yeah.
embodies this hope for upward mobility,
Right.
a way to escape the cycle of poverty that seems to define their lives.
And then, of course, tragedy strikes with William's death.
Yes.
It's just devastating for Gertrude. And
Devastating.
it seems like she pours all of her hopes and dreams into Paul,
Mm-hmm.
who becomes her primary focus.
It's interesting how Lawrence foreshadows this shift in their relationship even before William's death.
Oh, really?
Remember when Paul is a young boy and falls ill?
Uh-huh.
Gertrude becomes fiercely protective, almost obsessive in her care for him.
Yep.
It's as if she's already clinging to him as a source of emotional sustenance.
That makes me think about the concept of the Oedipal complex.
Yeah.
It's almost like Lawrence is setting the stage for this intense, almost suffocating bond
Right.
between the mother and son that will define Paul's relationships with women throughout the novel.
Exactly. And as Paul grows older, that bond only intensifies,
Right.
especially as Walter's authority within the family diminishes,
Mm.
both due to his physical decline after an injury and his inability to adapt to the changing social landscape. It's
Yeah.
like Lawrence is deliberately creating this power vacuum that Gertrude fills,
Right.
making her the dominant force in Paul's life.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's intense.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
As Paul grows older, it seems like he's really caught between this like
right.
harsh industrial world of his father
Yeah.
and the more refined intellectual world of his mother.
Hmm.
He's drawn to art, to beauty, which sets him apart from the
Yeah.
miners and even his own family.
It's as if he's searching for a way to transcend
Yeah.
the limitations of his environment.
Right.
Remember that beautiful passage
Yeah.
where he's sketching in the woods
Mm-hmm.
and describes feeling this sense of connection with nature?
Yeah.
Lawrence writes, "He was aware of the scent of damp earth and leaves, the faint, sweet aroma of the primroses. He felt a sense of peace and belonging that he had never known before.
Right.
This yearning for something
Yeah.
beyond the grim reality of the coal mines really sets him apart."
Right. And that's a perfect example of how Lawrence uses nature imagery
Exactly.
to reflect Paul's inner life.
Yes.
It's so evocative.
Yeah.
And then we're introduced to Miriam Lavers,
Yes.
this spiritual, intellectual girl from a neighboring farm.
Right.
It seems like she represents another path for Paul,
Mm-hmm.
a path away from the darkness of the minds
Right.
and towards something more fulfilling.
What's interesting about Miriam is that she embodies a kind of
Yeah.
idealized femininity.
Right.
She's pure artistic and deeply connected to nature.
Right.
However, their relationship is complex.
Yeah.
Paul is clearly drawn to her intellect and spirituality,
Right.
but he also struggles with his physical attraction to her.
It's almost like he's afraid of that passion.
Right.
Or maybe afraid of how his mother would react.
Yeah.
I was struck by Gertrude's intense disapproval of Miriam.
Oh, yeah.
What do you make of that?
Well, it's more than just disapproval, I think.
Right.
It's a deep-seated fear that Miriam will take Paul away from her,
Okay.
both physically and emotionally.
Right.
Remember that tense dinner scene where Gertrude barely even acknowledges Miriam?
Oh, yeah.
Lawrence writes, Gertrude's face was hard and cold. She spoke to Miriam politely, but there was an icy barrier between them.
Right.
That speaks volumes about the underlying power struggle between these two women for Paul's attention and affection.
This is where the Oedipal complex becomes even more apparent.
Exactly.
Paul's caught between his desire for independence, embodied by Miriam, and his deep-rooted attachment to his mother.
Yeah.
He seems almost paralyzed by this fear of hurting her, of betraying her love.
And it's not just about Paul's feelings.
Right.
Gertrude's own insecurities play a huge role here.
Yeah.
She sees any woman who comes into Paul's life as a threat,
Yeah.
a rival for his love.
Right.
It's almost like she's trying to keep him trapped in this perpetual state of childhood dependence.
It's such an intense and unhealthy relationship.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
It makes me wonder how much of Gertrude's disapproval stems from her own,
Oh, absolutely.
unfulfilled desires,
Yeah.
the dreams that she had to sacrifice when she married Walter
Right.
and settled into the life of a miner's wife.
Exactly.
It's almost like she's projecting those unfulfilled longings onto Paul.
That's a really insightful observation. And
Right.
it highlights this broader theme
Right.
of the changing role of women in society.
Mhm.
Gertrude is intelligent and capable,
Right.
but she's confined by these social expectations of her time.
Right.
Miriam, on the other hand,
Yeah.
represents a more modern, independent woman
Right.
who challenges those conventions.
It's interesting how Lawrence contrasts those two female characters.
Yeah.
Miriam is ethereal and spiritual, while Clara Dawes,
Right.
who enters the picture later, is more earthly and sensual.
Right.
It's almost like they represent
Yeah.
different sides of Paul's own desires.
Exactly. And Paul's inability to reconcile those desires, to
Right.
find a balance between the spiritual and the physical,
Right.
the intellectual and the emotional, is really at the heart of his struggle. He's torn between the expectations of society, the suffocating love of his mother,
Right.
and his own burgeoning need for self-discovery.
You see that tension play out in his relationships with both Miriam and Clara.
Yeah.
He's drawn to them both,
Mm-hmm.
but he also sabotages those relationships,
Right.
almost as if he's afraid of the intimacy that they offer.
The theme of love and duty is so central to this novel. Paul's sense of duty to his mother clashes with this yearning for romantic fulfillment.
Yeah.
And in a way, he's never truly able to escape the gravitational pull of that maternal bond, even as he tries to forge his own path.
Which leads us to the breaking point in his relationship with Miriam.
Yes.
They share this incredible intellectual connection,
Right.
but the physical passion is missing.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's Paul who ends things,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a decision that just seems to devastate them both.
Yeah.
It's interesting how Paul's break with Miriam almost seems to coincide with his growing fascination with Clara Dawes.
Right.
She's so different from Miriam.
Yeah.
More independent, more sensual.
It's as if Paul is seeking the opposite of what Miriam represented. He's moving away from the spiritual and intellectual and towards something more grounded,
Okay.
more physical.
Right.
Claire challenges him in ways that Miriam just didn't. She's a married woman separated from her husband.
Right.
And she represents a kind of rebellion against societal expectations. Yeah. That Paul finds both alluring and unsettling.
Their relationship is so passionate,
Yes.
but it's also incredibly complicated.
It is.
There's the obvious obstacle of her marriage to Baxter Dawes.
Right.
And then there's Paul's own guilt about pursuing this relationship
Yeah.
that he knows his mother would just disapprove of.
And that guilt speaks volumes about the hold that Gertrude still has over him.
Right.
Even as he tries to assert his independence by choosing Clara,
Yeah.
he's still wrestling with this fear of her judgment,
Yeah.
the fear of losing her love.
I'm curious, what are your thoughts on Baxter Dawes?
Oh, he's a fascinating character.
Yeah, he's so complex,
He is.
like brutal and unrefined on the surface.
Right.
But there's also this vulnerability to him,
Yeah.
this sense of being lost and hurt.
I think Baxter embodies the darker side of masculinity.
Okay.
The aggression and the frustration that can fester when men feel powerless
Right.
and alienated.
Yeah.
He's a foil to Paul, representing the path that Paul could have taken had he succumbed to the anger and resentment
Right.
that simmers beneath the surface.
The fight scene between Paul and Baxter is so...
It's visceral.
Yeah.
So raw.
It's more than just a physical confrontation.
Absolutely.
It's a clash of ideologies.
Yes.
This struggle for dominance.
And it's significant that the fight takes place in the context of their rivalry over Clara.
Right.
She becomes this symbolic prize, a representation of the power that they both crave.
Right.
But it's also about Paul's own internal struggle with masculinity.
Right.
He's trying to prove himself,
Yeah.
to break free from the shadow of his father
Right.
and assert his own identity.
And then, just as Paul and Clara's relationship seems to be reaching its peak,
Right.
Gertrude's health deteriorates.
Yes.
It's heartbreaking to witness her decline.
It is.
And Paul is so torn between his love for Clara
Mm.
and his duty to his dying mother.
This is where the novel takes on this truly tragic dimension.
Yeah.
Paul's forced to confront the ultimate loss,
Right.
the severing of the bond that has defined his life.
Right.
And his decision to ease Gertrude's suffering with morphine
Yeah.
is both an act of mercy and a symbolic act of liberation.
That scene is so powerful.
It is.
It's as if he's finally releasing her from her pain.
Yeah.
And in doing so, he's also releasing himself from the suffocating grip of her love.
It's a pivotal moment,
Yeah.
both for Paul and for the novel as a whole.
Right.
The Oedipal conflict, which has been building throughout the story,
Right.
finally reaches its climax and resolution.
Yeah.
Gertrude's death marks the end of an era, the end of Paul's childhood and the beginning of his journey into adulthood.
The final chapters are just filled with this sense of emptiness and uncertainty.
Yes, they are.
Paul breaks things off with Clara, realizing that their relationship can't truly fulfill him,
Right.
and she ultimately returns to Baxter.
Yeah.
He's lost both women he loved,
Right.
and he's left grappling with this question of who he is
Yeah.
and what his purpose might be.
The ending of Sons and Lovers is deliberately ambiguous.
Right.
We see Paul walking toward the lights of the city,
Yeah.
but we don't know what the future holds for him.
Right.
Has he truly broken free from the shackles of his past?
Yeah.
Or will he forever be haunted by the ghosts of his relationships with his mother, Miriam, and Clara?
I think that ambiguity is what makes this novel so powerful and so enduring.
I agree.
Lawrence doesn't offer easy answers or neat resolutions.
Right.
He leaves us with this sense of the complexity of human relationships, the enduring power of the past,
Yes.
and the eternal search for meaning and connection.
And ultimately, isn't that what great literature does?
Yeah.
It challenges us to think deeply, to
Sure.
question our own assumptions,
Mm.
and to grapple with the profound questions of love, loss, and the human condition.
Right.
Sons and Lovers is a novel that stays with you long after you finish reading it, prompting you to reflect on your own experiences and to search for your own answers to the questions that it raises.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah,
I'm left with a sense of both sadness and hope.
right.
Sadness for the pain and loss that just permeate Paul's life,
Mm-hmm.
but also this hope for the possibility of growth,
Yeah,
transformation,
right.
and ultimately perhaps a sense of peace.
And perhaps that's the most important takeaway from this novel.
Yeah.
Even in the face of tragedy,
Right.
even in the midst of our most profound struggles,
Yeah.
there's always the potential for healing,
Mm-hmm.
for self-discovery,
Right.
and for the emergence of a new dawn.